The question is the motion be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Cowan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I join with the member for Fowler to speak on this important matter. I know that he has a long history in this place of speaking on behalf of the great and good cause of freedom in Vietnam. Freedom in Vietnam, which includes religious freedom, freedom of speech, and I guess, as many of us would say, a long hope, and of course many of the Vietnamese people, all Vietnamese people in Australia, look forward to a day when there is a true democracy in Vietnam. A true democracy where we don't have to see that anybody who raises even the possibility of an advancement beyond the single-party state isn't committing a crime, where the Vietnamese government will be true to the covenants of human rights and democracy that in some cases they have signed but never adhered to. Mr Deputy Speaker, in my 2 visits to Vietnam and my many talks to Vietnamese people within the electorate of Cowan, and from what I've seen on the websites and the blogs regarding matters to do with freedoms in Vietnam, the issues could probably be defined to 3 areas, and that is religious freedom, land rights, and the last area that I particularly want to mention, or the area that I particularly want to mention, and this is involving so many of these bloggers and so many of the protests that we've seen in Hanoi, in Saigon and in other places in Vietnam, relates to patriotism. It relates to when Vietnamese people who believe very strongly in their homeland, in their nation, offer up their voices, whether it is through the electronic means, through it is protests, or other means, offer up their voices to talk about what is in the best interests of their nation. And yet on so many occasions, the Vietnamese government finds fault with that, locks people up, jails people, and particularly it is the case for Nguyen Phuong Nguyen, Dinh Nguyen Ca, and more recently Ca's brother as well, who's been recently jailed, recently arrested anyway. And the reasons why, the problems that they have, the patriotism or the belief in their country that so often lands people, brings them into conflict with the socialist government, the communist government in Vietnam, are things to do with the national interest. The Paracel and Spratly Islands in the East Sea, these are things that a lot of Vietnamese people are concerned about. The pandering in many ways of the communist government to Beijing, people find fault with that. They also find fault with the Chinese concessions, the bauxite mines in the highlands, doing untold environmental damage. So people feel strongly about their country, and for that feeling, that patriotism, that pursuit of interests to do with Vietnam, the national interests of Vietnam, people find themselves jailed. People are arrested on a regular basis. And that is the reality of what's actually going on in Vietnam. I've spoken on many occasions about the religious freedoms, and again the member for Fowler mentioned the young Catholic people that have been fairly recently jailed and sentenced in Vietnam. Often that is to do with land rights and the wish to be able to follow their religion without the controls of the state. As we know, in Vietnam, people are free to practice religion, provided they have their leaders authorised and licensed by the state. I'm being facetious, obviously, because that is no great freedom at all. But if a church is prepared to hand over its membership list to the state, then they are free to practice. If they wish to hand over the list of names of people that attend regularly or come and visit their church their temple or whatever, then again they can practice their religion. But if people in Vietnam refuse to do those things, if they refuse to just hand over their lists, and if they refuse to do exactly as they're told by the state, then they come afoul of the state. They are persecuted by the state. And again, we've spoken before about the Cowshed Church in Saigon. I'm fortunate enough to visit there back in, I think it was the start of 2011, and worshipped with the Mennonites in the Cowshed Church. Kicked out of the house church that they had, because the state, the local authorities of the communists didn't like what was being said, or didn't like the fact that that church didn't provide their membership lists to the state, that they wouldn't do as they were told. And as a consequence, they were kicked out. And the pastor's wife, who suffered from mental illness, was forced, and I saw her there on that day, they were forced to live in that shed while the pastor was in jail, or while the pastor is in jail, forced to live in that shed behind a curtain with the Mekong River having risen at the time of my visit anyway, so we were knee-deep in the rivers of the Mekong, and there the suffering pastor's wife with her mental illness, unfortunately she has since died, she was stuck there, suffering, without any support from the state, in amongst the fellows of the church persecuted by that same state. That is the religious freedom that awaits those in Vietnam who refuse to do the bidding and refuse to follow the orders of the state. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we look at what happens in Vietnam and the tragedy of Vietnam, as we know, and as we see all the time in Australia, the Vietnamese people, those that hail from Vietnam, are highly successful in this country because the shackles of socialism and communism are taken off their backs. If they want to work hard, they can get the benefits of working hard because they live in this country. Back there, they have to do as they're told. The socialism, the Communist Party, imposes the restrictions on people economically, religiously, democratically. They do that, and they hold back a proud country of 88 million people. You can only imagine how successful Vietnam would be without the shackles of an oppressive state, an uncaring and self-motivated and self-serving organisations such as the Communist Party of Vietnam. I can only imagine how successful that country would be if the same conditions that we have here, that Vietnamese people, Vietnamese Australians in this country have thrived under, had those same opportunities in their homeland. And they want those same opportunities. There needs to be a time in the future when Article 88 of the Vietnamese Constitution, that article that has jailed and caused so many people to be arrested, when that article is taken off the backs of the Vietnamese people, and that Vietnam truly becomes a country where the individual is valued, the individual and collectively the success of the country will be valued beyond what is currently the case. As we know, in all communist systems, all socialist systems, the talk is very good at the start about the looking after the individuals, but in the end, what it always comes down to, in every case, is about self-serving organisations such as the Vietnamese Communist Party, who exist just for the benefit of that small number of members, and in the end, they are the ones looked after while the people do the bidding of the state. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity that the member for Fowler has provided today to again let us look at what needs to change in Vietnam. And I hope that through the human rights dialogue that we have, I believe it is the 9th human rights dialogue, that some progress can be made. But at the moment it looks like progress isn't being made. The imprisonment, the arresting and the beatings of these young activists, particularly Nguyen Phuong Nguyen, is a tragedy that really does represent what the state of Vietnam is all about. I'm sad and sorry that there has been no great progress in Vietnam, but we do look forward to better days, and hopefully through the dialogue we will see better days, but time will tell. And I pay tribute to these brave Vietnamese people.
I thank the Honourable